The desperate call. The crystalline spires of Zephyria burned against the star-filled sky as Commander Lyra Voss pressed her six-fingered hand against the communication console. Her silver-scaled skin reflected the emergency lights that bathed the command center in crimson mornings. Around her, the last defenders of the Zeridian Republic worked frantically at their stations, while explosions shook the underground facility. "Commander, we have lost contact with Sectors 7 through 12, reported Lieutenant Kex, his normally melodic voice strained with exhaustion. The Zeridians were a peaceful species, their bodies adapted for harmony rather than war. Their tall, graceful forms and large, expressive eyes had evolved for art, music, and scientific discovery, not for the brutal reality of interstellar conflict." Lyra studied the tactical display with growing despair. Red markers indicated Krek's Dominion forces advancing across their homeworld's surface. The enemy had landed 3 days ago with overwhelming force, and despite the valiant efforts of the Zeridian Defense Corps, the outcome was becoming inevitable. The Kreks were a warrior species, bred for conquest and expansion. Their dark, armored forms stood twice the height of Zeridians, with razor-sharp claws and an insatiable hunger for domination. "What is the status of the civilian evacuation?" Lyra asked, though she feared the answer. "Slow, Commander. The Kreks have targeted our transport hubs. We estimate that only 40% of the population has reached the underground shelters. The rest," Kex's voice trailed off. 200 million innocent Zeridians remain trapped in the cities above. Men, women, and children who had lived their entire lives in peace, creating beautiful music and advancing scientific knowledge. The Kreks would show them no mercy. The Dominion's policy was simple: conquer, enslave, or eliminate. Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling as the lights flickered. Through the reinforced windows, Lyra could see the glow of fires consuming her world's capital city. The sight filled her heart with anguish. The Zeridians possessed two hearts, a biological redundancy that had once been considered a blessing. Now both hearts felt as if they were breaking simultaneously. "Commander," called Chief Communications Officer Nira from across the room, "I have prepared the galaxy-wide emergency broadcast as you requested. All frequencies are ready." Lyra nodded grimly. This was their final option, though she held little hope for its success. The major galactic powers had already made their positions clear through diplomatic channels. The Galactic Senate had issued statements of concern and sympathy, but no offers of military assistance. The Alterian Federation claimed they were monitoring the situation closely. The Nexus Commonwealth promised to provide humanitarian aid after the conflict is resolved. Empty words from civilizations that valued their own safety above the lives of others. "Broadcast on all emergency frequencies," Lyra commanded. "Maximum range." The transmission array powered up with a deep hum that resonated through the facility's structure. Every remaining communications satellite in orbit focused their signals outward, carrying Lyra's words across the galaxy at the speed of light. She stood before the recording device, thinking of the millions of her people counting on this desperate gambit. "This is Commander Lyra Voss of the Zeridian Republic Defense Corps," she began, her voice carrying the weight of her civilization's desperation. "We are under attack by the Krek's Dominion. Our defensive forces have been overwhelmed. 200 million civilians are trapped on our homeworld with nowhere to flee. The Kreks do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. In hours, perhaps less, our entire civilization will be extinct." She paused, gathering her strength to continue. Outside, the sound of Krek's war machines grew louder as they approached the underground complex. "We call upon any species capable of providing military assistance to please help us. We have committed no crimes against any civilization. We seek only to live in peace and contribute to the galaxy through art, science, and culture. If there is anyone listening who believes that innocent lives have value, if there is anyone who stands against genocide, please help us. We have nowhere else to turn." The transmission ended, and the facility fell into tense silence. The message would take days to reach most civilizations, and even if someone chose to respond, it might be too late. Lyra allowed herself a moment of grief for her people before returning to her duties as a commander. Thousands of light years away, the signal reached Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha, located in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. Specialist Rodriguez was nearing the end of her shift when her equipment detected the unusual transmission. At first, she thought it might be another routine trade communication from one of the known alien civilizations. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 30 years, and contact with other species was still relatively rare. But as the universal translator processed the message, Rodriguez realized this was something entirely different. The desperation in the alien commander's voice was unmistakable, even through the electronic conversion. She immediately forwarded the transmission to Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva. Within 2 hours, the message had reached Admiral Marcus Chen, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Chen was a veteran of the asteroid wars, a series of conflicts that had shaped humanity's military doctrine in the early days of space expansion. He had spent his career preparing for the possibility that Earth might face hostile alien forces. He had never considered that Earth might be called upon to protect other species from such threats. The Admiral sat in his office overlooking Lake Geneva, studying the translated message and intelligence reports about the species involved. The Zeridians appeared to be exactly what their commander claimed, a peaceful civilization focused on arts and sciences. Their technology was advanced, but primarily devoted to exploration and communication rather than warfare. The Krex Dominion, on the other hand, was a well-known threat. Earth's intelligence services had been tracking their expansion for years, noting with concern how they systematically conquered or destroyed weaker civilizations. "Admiral," his aide announced through the intercom, "the Defense Council is ready for the emergency session." Chen made his way to the secure conference room, where Earth's top military and political leaders had assembled via holographic link. Defense Secretary Williams, General Hayes of the Marine Corps, and Admiral Foster of the Space Navy all waited for his briefing. The weight of the decision ahead was evident on every face. "Gentlemen and ladies," Chen began, activating the holographic display that showed the Zeridian star system. "We have received a distress call from an alien civilization under attack. The situation is as serious as it gets. Genocide in progress, with 200 million civilians at risk." General Hayes studied the tactical information with a frown. "What kind of forces are we talking about, Admiral? What would it take to make a difference?" Intelligence estimates put the Krex fleet at roughly 150 vessels of various classes. They have complete orbital control and have landed significant ground forces. The Zeridians have lost most of their defensive capability. Secretary Williams leaned forward. "And what exactly are we considering? Earth has 12 operational deep space warships. The odds are not in our favor." "No, they are not," Chen admitted. "But consider this. We have been preparing for defensive warfare since we joined the galactic community. Our ships are designed to protect Earth from invasion. Our weapons systems, our tactics, our training, all of it has been focused on defending our home against superior numbers." Admiral Foster raised an eyebrow. "You are suggesting that our defensive doctrine might work offensively. I am suggesting that the same principles apply. The Krex expect to face conventional galactic military forces. They have never encountered human warfare doctrine. Our ships may be outnumbered, but they are not outmatched in firepower or defensive capability." The debate continued for over an hour. The political implications were enormous. Earth was still a newcomer to galactic politics, and intervening in an alien conflict could have unpredictable consequences. Some argued that humanity should focus on protecting its own interests rather than risking everything for unknown aliens. But Chen found an unlikely ally in Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's chief xenobiologist, who had been studying the galactic community since first contact. "Admiral Chen is right about more than just military considerations," Dr. Kim argued via holographic link from her research station on Luna. This is about what kind of species we want to be known as in the galaxy. Every major civilization has chosen to stand aside and let the Zeridians be slaughtered. If we do the same, we become complicit in genocide. But if we act, if we show that humanity is willing to risk everything to protect innocent lives, we establish ourselves as something different, something better. The final vote was closer than Chen had hoped, but humanity chose action over safety. Within 18 hours, Earth's entire deep space fleet was assembled at the Mars orbital shipyard, loading supplies and preparing for humanity's first interstellar military mission. The flagship ESV Liberty led the formation, followed by 4 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and a support vessel carrying additional ammunition and medical supplies. Each ship represented the culmination of human military engineering. Heavily armored, bristling with kinetic weapons and missile systems, designed to survive and fight in the hostile environment of space. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the destroyer ESV Defiance, named after humanity's refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. His crew of 120 had trained for 3 years in preparation for possible alien contact, but none of them had expected their first mission to be a rescue operation in a distant star system. All ships report ready for jump, Morrison announced to Admiral Chen aboard the Liberty. Set course for the Zeridian system, Chen ordered. Maximum speed. We have innocent lives depending on us. The human fleet engaged their quantum jump drives simultaneously, disappearing from Earth's solar system in flashes of blue light. They were traveling toward a battle they might not survive, to save people they had never met, for no reason other than it was the right thing to do. Back on Zephyria, Commander Lyra Voss received scattered reports from her remaining observation posts. The Krek's ground forces were systematically destroying every pocket of resistance they encountered. Civilian casualties were mounting as the enemy showed no distinction between military and non-military targets. Her underground command center was now the last organized defense post on the planet. Commander, Lieutenant Kex called out with surprise in his voice, "I am detecting new ships entering our system. The configuration does not match Krek's or any known Zeridian ally." Lyra rushed to the sensor station, hardly daring to hope. 12 unknown vessels were approaching from the edge of the system, moving in tight formation toward the planet. They were smaller than the massive Krek's warships, but appeared to be heavily built, more like mobile fortresses than the elegant designs favored by most galactic civilizations. "Can you identify their origin?" she asked. "Working on it, Commander. The computer is comparing their design signatures with known galactic databases." A pause as the analysis completed. "According to our records, these ships match no known civilization in our database. However, I am detecting a communication attempt on emergency frequencies. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike any Lyra had heard before. It was deeper than most galactic species, with strange tonal qualities that the universal translator struggled to process. But the words were clear enough. "Zeridian Defense Command, this is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help." For the first time in days, Commander Lyra Voss felt hope stirring in her hearts. Somewhere in the galaxy, there existed a species called humans who had decided that innocent lives were worth fighting for. As she prepared to respond to these unexpected saviors, the underground facility shook with another nearby explosion. The Krek's were closing in, but now the Zeridians were no longer alone. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. The human response. General Thax stood on the bridge of his command dreadnought, the destroyer of worlds, watching the final phases of Zephyria's conquest unfold on the tactical display. The Krek's military leader was an imposing figure even by the standards of his warrior species, standing 9 feet tall with battle scars crisscrossing his dark chitinous armor. His 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency as he coordinated the final assault on the Zeridian resistance. "General," his intelligence officer reported, approaching with the subservient posture required when addressing a superior, Our sensors have detected 12 unknown vessels entering the system. They appear to be responding to the Zeridian distress call. Thax turned 2 of his 4 red eyes toward the officer, while keeping the others focused on the planetary bombardment display. The Kreks had evolved from predatory insects, and their multifaceted vision allowed them to process multiple information streams simultaneously. Unknown vessels. Explain. They do not match any configuration in our military database, General. The ships appear to be of primitive construction, heavily armored but lacking the elegant design principles of advanced civilizations. Our analysts believe they may be from a recently contacted species. Thax's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. In 500 years of conquest, the Kreks' dominion had never been seriously challenged. Other species either fled when the dominion approached, or they fought briefly before being crushed. The idea that some primitive civilization would dare to interfere in Kreks' military operations was both amusing and insulting. How many vessels? 12 ships, General. Our force consists of 150 combat vessels. They are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Send Squadron Leader Vex with 20 ships to destroy these newcomers quickly, Thax ordered. I do not want this minor annoyance to delay our conquest schedule. The Dominion Council expects this system to be fully pacified within the standard cycle. As his orders were relayed, Thax returned his attention to the main battle. The Zeridian resistance was crumbling rapidly. Their underground command center had been located, and Kreks assault troops were preparing to breach its defenses. Soon, the last organized military resistance would be eliminated, and the systematic processing of the civilian population could begin. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the ESV Liberty, studying the tactical situation with growing anger. The orbital bombardment of Zephyria was clearly targeting civilian areas rather than military installations. Entire cities were burning while Kreks' ground forces hunted down fleeing refugees. This was not war, it was extermination. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the sensor station, I am detecting movement in the enemy fleet. 20 vessels are breaking formation and moving to intercept us. They are testing us, Chen said grimly. Probably think a small force will be enough to deal with primitive newcomers. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Enemy squadron approaching. Prepare for engagement. Remember, we are not here to trade shots at long range like a formal galactic battle. We are here to save lives, and that means closing with the enemy and destroying them as quickly as possible. Captain Morrison acknowledged the order from the bridge of the ESV Defiance. His crew had trained extensively in close-quarters space combat, a doctrine that set human military thinking apart from most galactic civilizations. While other species preferred long-range energy weapon exchanges, humans had developed tactics based on their experience with naval warfare in Earth's oceans. Get close, hit hard, and destroy the enemy before they could respond effectively. Weapons hot, Morrison ordered. All hands, prepare for acceleration. We are going to show these aliens what human engineering can do. The Kreks squadron approached in a traditional battle formation, expecting to engage the human ships at maximum weapons range. Squadron Leader Vex had commanded hundreds of similar actions against primitive species. The pattern was always the same. The enemies would attempt to flee or would engage in ineffective long-range combat before being systematically destroyed. These humans would be no different. But as the two forces closed to weapons range, the human ships did something unexpected. Instead of slowing to engage at a distance, they accelerated directly toward the Kreks formation. Their massive engines pushed them to speeds that should have been impossible for vessels of their size and apparent mass. Evasive maneuvers, Vex commanded as the human ships closed rapidly. All vessels, concentrate fire on the lead enemy ship. The Kreks opened fire with their plasma cannons, sending streams of superheated energy across space toward the approaching human fleet. The weapons that had destroyed countless alien vessels struck the human ships and seemed to have no effect. The strange, angular vessels continued their approach, their thick armor absorbing the energy blasts that would have crippled most galactic warships. Then the humans fired back. Instead of energy weapons, the human ships launched solid projectiles at incredible velocities. Kinetic kill vehicles, accelerated by magnetic fields to a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into Krex vessels with devastating results. The projectiles punched through shields and armor that had protected the Dominion fleet for centuries, causing catastrophic damage to ships that had seemed invulnerable. But the kinetic rounds were only the beginning. As the human ships closed to point-blank range, they unleashed weapons that no galactic civilization had ever developed. Nuclear missiles. The warheads had been designed to destroy hardened military targets on Earth, but in the vacuum of space, their effect was even more devastating. Krex vessels simply vanished in brief, brilliant stars of fusion fire. Within 10 minutes, 18 of the 20 Krex ships were destroyed or disabled. Squadron leader Vex managed to transmit a final panicked message before his own vessel was torn apart by a barrage of human missiles. General Thax. These humans, their weapons, they fight like madmen. They show no fear, no mercy. They are unlike anything we have faced before. The transmission cut off as the ESV Defiance finished destroying the last enemy ship in the squadron. Not a single human vessel had been lost, though several showed damage from the energy weapon strikes. General Thax stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 20 veteran Krex warships had been destroyed by 12 primitive vessels in less than 10 minutes. It was impossible. It violated everything the Dominion knew about galactic warfare. Analysis. He roared at his tactical staff. How did they destroy Squadron Leader Vex so easily? His chief analyst worked frantically at the sensor data. General, the human weapons appear to be based on kinetic energy and nuclear fusion, rather than directed energy. Their ships are built like fortresses, designed to absorb damage while closing to short range. They fight with tactics we have never encountered. Nuclear weapons. Thax's mandibles clicked in confusion. No civilized species uses nuclear weapons in space combat. The radiation, the debris field, the environmental damage. It appears these humans do not share our concerns about clean warfare, General. They seem focused entirely on destroying the enemy as efficiently as possible. For the first time in his long military career, General Thax felt something approaching uncertainty. The Krex Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds by following established military doctrine. They had never faced an enemy that ignored those doctrines entirely. Recall all assault squadrons, he ordered. Form defensive formations around the command vessels. Prepare for full fleet engagement. Meanwhile, Admiral Chen received an urgent communication from the Zeridian Command Center. Commander Lyra Voss appeared on his screen, her silver features showing exhaustion but also desperate hope. Admiral Chen, I cannot express our gratitude for your response. However, I must warn you that the Krex have over 100 ships remaining. Your victory against their squadron was remarkable, but the main fleet will be ready for you now. Chen studied the tactical display showing the Krex fleet reorganizing into defensive formations. Commander Voss, what is the status of your civilian population? How many people are still in danger? Approximately 120 million civilians are trapped in the cities being attacked by Krex ground forces. Our evacuation shelters can protect them temporarily, but if the orbital bombardment continues, the shelters will not hold. Understood. We are going to deal with the fleet first, then provide support for ground operations. Chen turned to his communications officer. Get me Captain Morrison. Morrison's face appeared on the screen, showing the controlled excitement of a professional soldier who had just won his first battle. Admiral, the Defiance is ready for the next phase. Jake, I need you to take 3 destroyers and start rescue operations. Get to those civilian shelters and start evacuating people to the outer system. Use your medical bays and cargo holds if necessary. What about the main fleet engagement, sir? Leave that to us. The cruisers and I will keep the Krex busy while you save lives. That is why we came here. As the human fleet split into 2 groups, Dr. Sarah Kim monitored the situation from her position aboard the support vessel ESV Mercy. As Earth's chief xenobiologist, she had insisted on joining the mission to make first contact with the Zeridians and gather intelligence about Krek society. What she was witnessing challenged everything the galactic community thought it knew about warfare. "Admiral," she transmitted to the Liberty, "I am monitoring Krek's communications. They are genuinely shocked by our tactics. Their entire military doctrine is based on formal battle engagement at long range. They have never faced an enemy willing to take heavy damage to close with them." "What about their morale, Doctor?" "Fragmenting rapidly. The Krek social structure is based on perceived invincibility. They have never been successfully challenged before. This defeat is shaking their fundamental beliefs about their superiority." Chen nodded grimly. "Good. Fear is a weapon we can use. All ships, prepare for the main engagement. Remember, every minute we keep them busy, it is another minute for civilian evacuations." The remaining 8 human ships accelerated toward the Krek's main fleet, which had arranged itself in a defensive formation around General Thax's flagship. The Dominion vessels were larger and more numerous, but they were about to learn that size and numbers meant nothing when facing an enemy that fought without regard for traditional military conventions. Captain Morrison led his rescue squadron toward Zephyria's surface, where Krek's dropships were landing assault troops in the major cities. The sight of civilians fleeing through burning streets while alien warriors hunted them filled the human crews with cold rage. This was why they had come so far from home, why they were risking everything against impossible odds. "All ships target the Krek's ground forces," Morrison ordered. "Precision strikes only. We are here to protect civilians, not to add to their casualties." The human destroyers began bombing runs against Krek's positions, their nuclear weapons precisely targeted to eliminate enemy forces while minimizing damage to the surrounding city. Each strike was calculated to maximize military effectiveness while protecting innocent lives, a balance that required skill and restraint that impressed the watching Zeridians. Commander Lyra Voss coordinated the evacuation from her underground command post, working with human officers to identify the safest routes for civilian transport. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable, considering they had never met before this crisis. "Commander," Lieutenant Kex reported with amazement in his voice, "the human ships are achieving impossible precision with their bombardment. They are destroying Krek's positions within meters of civilian shelters without causing collateral damage." "How is that possible?" "I believe they are using artificial intelligence to calculate blast patterns and debris trajectories in real time. Their weapon systems are incredibly sophisticated, despite their primitive appearance." As the evacuation proceeded, the main battle reached its climax. Admiral Chen led his ships in a series of coordinated attacks against the Krek's fleet, using tactics that seemed to come from ancient human naval warfare rather than modern space combat. The human ships worked in coordinated groups, concentrating their firepower on individual targets while using their superior armor to absorb enemy fire. General Thax watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that should have been easily defeated. The humans fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and apparent madness, willing to take damage that would cause other species to retreat. Their weapons were devastating, and their ships seemed designed specifically for close-range combat. "General," his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we have lost 60% of our combat vessels. The humans are targeting our command ships now." "Impossible," Thax snarled, but the evidence was undeniable. His fleet was being destroyed by 12 primitive vessels that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. As the battle reached its conclusion, the few remaining Krek ships began to retreat. General Thax faced a choice he had never had to make before: continue fighting and lose everything, or withdraw and admit defeat. For a species that had never been beaten, the decision was almost impossible to comprehend. "All ships," he finally ordered, "withdraw from the system. Emergency jump to rally point 7. The surviving Krek's vessels engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared, leaving behind the wreckage of their fleet and the first defeat in Dominion history. Admiral Chen stood on his bridge, watching the enemy retreat with grim satisfaction. Around Zephyria, human ships continued their rescue operations, loading Zeridian civilians into their cargo holds and medical bays. The crisis was not over, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. "Admiral," Dr. Kim transmitted from the Mercy, "I am receiving communications from across the galaxy. News of our victory is spreading rapidly. Other species are impressed." Commander Lyra Voss appeared on the main screen, her expression showing emotions that the human crew was learning to recognize despite the alien features. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Zeridian Republic and 200 million lives you have saved, I offer our eternal gratitude. You have shown us that there are species in this galaxy who will fight for justice rather than simply pursue their own interests." Chen nodded solemnly. "Commander, this is what we do. Humanity believes that innocent lives are worth protecting, regardless of species or politics. We would hope that others would do the same for us if we were ever in similar circumstances." As the human fleet began the long journey back to Earth, they carried with them not just the gratitude of the Zeridian people, but a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They had proven that sometimes the newest species could teach the oldest civilizations what it truly meant to be civilized. The Krex Dominion would never be the same. For the first time in their history, they had encountered an enemy they could not defeat, a species that fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple principle that innocent lives mattered more than political expediency. And across the galaxy, other civilizations watched and wondered about these humans who had answered a desperate call for help from strangers, risking everything for no reward other than the knowledge that they had done what was right.